You watch those longevity videos and nod along. Grip strength, walking speed, sleep quality, appetite, mood. They list off the signs, the statistics, the studies. You listen, but you already know what they're going to say. You've heard it before. And still, every time you finish one of those videos, there's that same feeling crawling in your chest, that maybe the game is already decided, that maybe the signs are pointing in the wrong direction, that it's out of your hands. You think about your own grip, how you fumbled your keys last week, how opening jars has become more of a ritual than a task. You think about your walking speed, not like you used to move, that's for sure. A few years ago, you'd walk across the room without noticing. Now, you feel every step. Your knees narrate the whole journey. You pause halfway just to remember what you were walking toward. And sleep, please. Some nights it comes like a thief, sudden and full. Other nights, you lie awake staring at the ceiling, counting the hours before sunrise. You try to nap in the day, but feel guilty, or worse, still exhausted after. Your energy feels like a matchbook with only one strike left. Then they talk about social connection, loneliness. You used to have people around all the time. Now the phone rings less. Messages get shorter. You cancel things. They cancel things. Time stretches thin between visits. You tell yourself it's just how life goes, but deep down, you know it hurts. And so when the expert on screen says, if you struggle with these 7 signs, it could mean you won't live as long, something inside you goes cold. Not panicked, just still. Like a quiet resignation, a whispered voice that says, maybe it's too late. Maybe your time has already been measured. That's the part no one talks about in those videos, the ache that comes after, the silent dread that seeps in between the bullet points, the way it makes you feel like a ticking clock with no reset button. You close the video and sit back. You don't tell anyone you watched it. You don't want them to see that you're wondering how many years you have left, wondering what you're supposed to do with the ones that remain. Wondering if you've already passed some invisible line where health stops being built and just becomes something you watch fade. It's not fear, not quite. It's something quieter. A soft, gnawing helplessness. Because deep down, a part of you wants to fight. Not dramatically, not with speeches or declarations. You just want to feel like something is still within your control, that you haven't fully surrendered the reins to time or fate or statistics, that your life, your breath, your movement, your joy is still something you can shape. But those videos never say that. They list what to watch for, not what to do. They don't show you how to push the needle back. They don't say, you can reverse this. They just show you where the decline begins. And that leaves you frozen. Because what do you do with that kind of knowledge? What do you do when someone tells you that walking slower might mean dying sooner? You start watching your steps, counting how many seconds it takes to reach the end of the hall, noticing every pause, every wobble. You start testing your grip on the doorknob, measuring your mood like a scale. You become your own observer, tracking signs of decay. But here's the truth that no video ever leads with. Those signs. They aren't prophecies. They aren't locked fates or final verdicts. They're signals, they're invitations, not to despair, but to act, to adapt, to reclaim. Still, in this first moment, you don't know that yet. All you know is the tightness in your chest, the quiet voice in the back of your mind whispering that you're already behind, that maybe it's too late to rebuild anything meaningful, that the light ahead is dimming and there's nothing you can do but accept it. But something doesn't sit right with you, because even now, at this age, in this body, with this reality, something inside you still wants to push back. Something in you isn't quite ready to surrender the timeline someone else decided for you. Something in you knows. The numbers may be real, but they're not the whole story. And you're not done writing yours. They say it's in your blood, that it's all in your genes, that if your parents lived long, you probably will too. And if they didn't, well, good luck. You hit 70, and the story feels sealed. What's done is done. Your cells are aging. Your joints are stiffening. Your memory flickers. And no one tells you what to do, just what to expect. The myth settles in quietly, like fog at dusk. Longevity is luck, or fate, or maybe a number you were handed at birth and forgot to read. So you start telling yourself the same thing. You start chalking up every ache, every slow recovery, every lost thought to something beyond your control. It's just age. It's in the family. It's how we go. You start speaking about your body like a car that's slowly falling apart, like your only job now is to keep it from stalling before the finish line. You accept decline as a process you observe, not something you can influence. And why wouldn't you? Every message you've been fed reinforces it. You see headlines about superagers and centenarians with perfect genes. You hear about blue zones where people just seem to live longer without trying. And you think, that's not me. You weren't born into a village with daily hikes and fermented vegetables. You didn't win the genetic lottery. You didn't escape the stress, the sedentary decades, the habits you wish you'd changed sooner. So you lower your expectations, not just for your health, but for your hope. You tell yourself you're grateful just to be here. And yes, you are. But behind that gratitude is a quiet resignation. You don't plan for 10 years from now. You don't invest in new skills or routines. You start saying things like, I'm too old for that, or that's for younger folks, not because you believe it, but because you've been taught not to expect anything better. The myth wraps around your choices like a net, subtle, invisible, but strong. Because once you believe longevity is passive, just something you either have or don't, you stop engaging with the things that influence it. You don't ask yourself what you can build. You don't test what's still possible. You stop seeing your daily actions as meaningful inputs. You stop tweaking your walking pace or your grip or your sleep rhythm because somewhere deep down, you believe it won't matter. That's the lie that costs people their final decades, not in dramatic, sudden ways, but in slow, invisible ones, in tiny daily withdrawals from vitality, in the choice to not choose, to not strengthen, to not stretch, to not speak, to not reach out. because you think it's all downstream from your genes anyway. But here's what the myth hides. Even the strongest genetic factors only account for a fraction of your lifespan. The rest? Environment, habits, movement, sleep, nutrition, meaningful connection, tiny actions, repeated daily, with compounding returns. That's the truth buried beneath the myth. Longevity isn't given, it's built. And the people who live long truly live, not just exist, don't do it by watching the clock. They do it by refusing to hand over the steering wheel. They treat every day as a small vote cast for strength, clarity, movement, joy. They don't settle into decline. They resist it, not with force, but with presence. But you were never told this. You were told 70 was the start of the slow fade, that you should start taking it easy, that you'd done your work, and now it's just about comfort. You were told the best you can do is manage decline, soften the landing, keep yourself safe. No one mentioned that at 70, you can still initiate transformation, still make muscle, still expand memory, still shift your internal chemistry, still add years, not just to your life, but to your days. Because that's the danger of the myth. It doesn't just rob your body. It robs your imagination. It makes you afraid to try, makes you feel foolish for beginning something new. It convinces you that health belongs to the past, and so you stop building a future. But the myth is false. Your body, even now, responds to input. It adapts. It listens. It adjusts. Slowly, yes. Differently, yes. But it's not done. And that's the shift you need to make. To stop seeing longevity as a static condition and start seeing it as a living practice. One you can return to, shape, and strengthen, regardless of the age stamped on your license. Because the real question isn't how many years you were born to live. It's how many you're willing to reclaim. So you do nothing, not because you're lazy, not because you've given up, but because the myth made settling feel reasonable. It made shrinking seem smart. It told you to expect less, plan less, move less, because that's what getting old is supposed to mean. So you stop walking that extra block. You tell yourself your knees won't handle it, or that it's too cold, or that you're too tired. You sit a little longer. You avoid stairs when you used to climb them. You take the elevator without thinking. You skip the social gathering. Again, maybe they won't notice, maybe you'll go next time. Maybe it's better to rest, to play it safe. You convince yourself that solitude is peaceful, even when it starts to feel hollow. You tell yourself you don't mind the silence, but deep down, you miss laughter. You miss being seen. You eat what's easy. Toast, tea, whatever's in the fridge. Cooking feels like too much effort. Groceries feel like a chore. You stop thinking about nutrients, about protein, about building. You eat to pass the time, to take the edge off the ache. And slowly, your body starts to follow your habits into stillness. The changes are quiet at first, subtle. You lose a little muscle. You don't notice. You're more tired in the morning. You blame the weather. You feel less steady on your feet, but assume it's normal. You sleep lighter, wake up more often. You forget where you put things. Not always, just sometimes. Then it builds. Your walk becomes slower, not because of pain, but because your balance feels off. You hesitate more. You grip the railing. You start to plan your day around how far you have to go, how much energy it'll take. Your confidence shrinks in tiny increments. You feel it when you look in the mirror, not just age, but dullness, a sense that the lights are dimmer than they used to be. Not out, just low. You joke about it. You say, "I'm just getting old," like it's a badge. But part of you wonders if you're slowly disappearing. And the data catches up. The studies they mentioned in that video. You start checking every box. Slower walking speed, lower grip strength, shorter sleep cycles, less appetite, fewer conversations, more isolation. And instead of responding, instead of pushing back, you use the data as confirmation. See, you tell yourself, this is just what happens. The myth becomes a loop, a prophecy you fulfill simply by believing it. But here's the hardest part. You lose trust, not in the world, in yourself. You stop believing your body can respond. You stop believing your choices matter. You assume decline is the only direction left. So you stop testing your limits. You stop surprising yourself. You stop living with even a hint of curiosity about what you're still capable of. And in doing so, you let go of the years you haven't lived yet. Not all at once, not dramatically, but one uneventful day at a time. You miss the moment when you could have built strength because you weren't looking. You miss the conversation that could have lifted your spirit because you stayed home. You miss the evening walk that might have cleared your mind because the couch was closer. You miss the meal that could have nourished your body because you thought it wouldn't matter anyway. You begin to shrink, not just physically, but spiritually. The edges of your life close in. The colors dull. You stop dreaming. You stop investing. You stop reaching. You start using the phrase "back in the day" more often than "next year." And the truth? It breaks your heart, quietly, silently, because somewhere in you there's still life, still hunger, still hope, still a will to grow, to learn, to laugh so hard it hurts. But you've been sold a version of aging that doesn't leave room for that. A version that defines you by limits, not possibilities. And until you break that spell, until you remember that life doesn't stop responding just because you stopped asking, it will keep costing you. Not just years, but moments. The kind you still crave. The kind you still deserve. The kind you can still create. Here's what no one told you. Every one of those so-called predictors, they're not warnings. They're levers, sliders you can move. They're not there to scare you. They're there to guide you. Because walking speed, that's not a fixed number. It's a reflection of strength, of balance, of confidence. Grip strength. It's not just a test. It's a mirror for how often your hands do something that matters. Sleep quality. It doesn't just decline with age. It declines with inactivity, with stress, with broken rhythms you can rebuild. These signs aren't measurements of your decline. They're instructions for how to rebuild. You've been told to watch them, track them, monitor them. But not once did someone sit you down and say, you can change them. They are not destiny. They are feedback. They are whispers from your body saying, "Move me, lift me, nourish me, rest me," not perfectly, not intensely, just consistently. It starts small. You take a slightly longer walk, not because you have to hit 10,000 steps, but because movement is momentum. You grip something, a bag of groceries, a sponge, a light weight, just long enough for your body to say, "Oh, we still do this." You start eating food that feels alive, with texture, with color, with something your body can actually use. And your sleep, it doesn't just improve because you wish it would. It improves because your body feels engaged enough during the day to actually want deep rest at night. You don't have to overhaul everything. You don't need a gym membership. You don't need a morning routine that takes 2 hours and a list of supplements that cost $300. You just need a shift from watching to participating, from observing your decline to directing your comeback. Because when you move those levers, even a little, something unlocks. You begin to feel the quiet power of reclaiming agency, the thrill of realizing that you are not static, that your body, even now, still responds, that your brain, even after all these years, can still create new pathways, that your joints, your muscles, your lungs, your mind aren't done. No one ever told you that at 70, 75, 80, you could still reverse things, that your balance could improve, that your blood pressure could stabilize, that your risk of falls, of illness, of depression could shrink, not because of a miracle, but because of a shift in rhythm, because you stopped living like a fragile relic and started living like a responsive, adaptive system. Because that's what you are, adaptive. Your biology is listening. It is always listening. And when you speak to it, through motion, through effort, through intention, it responds, quietly at first, then unmistakably. Your walking speed isn't just about legs. It's about purpose, about having somewhere to go, about refusing to shuffle through the rest of your years like you're just killing time. Your grip strength isn't just a number on a chart. It's your ability to hold on to the world, to cook, to carry, to write, to connect. And your sleep, your beautiful, elusive sleep, isn't just about melatonin or white noise. It's about earning rest, about creating enough richness in your waking hours that your brain feels safe enough to let go at night. These signs they warn you about, they're not walls, they're doors. And the key is movement, nourishment, engagement, repetition, not punishment, not exhaustion, just rhythm. You've been waiting for permission, for someone to tell you it's not too late, for proof that small actions still matter. This is that proof. The science backs it. The data confirms it. But more importantly, your body already knows it. Because every time you move with purpose, eat with intention, rest with rhythm, you're changing the story. You're refusing to accept a future that someone else predicted for you. Every lever is within reach. All you have to do is start pulling. Stop seeing signs as statistics. Stop thinking of walking speed and sleep quality and grip strength as some silent scoreboard ticking in the background. These aren't numbers to be feared. They're rhythms to be tuned. You're not a lab report. You're a living system. You breathe. You respond. You adapt. You're not waiting to be measured. You're waiting to move. So shift the lens. Stop asking, "What's my number?" and start asking, "What's my rhythm?" How do you move through your day? How do you rise? How do you eat? Who do you speak to? When do you stop? When do you rest? When do you recharge? Walk daily, not to hit a goal, but to stay in motion. Not to burn calories, but to keep your circulation alive. The ground under your feet doesn't care how old you are. It just waits for you to keep stepping. That walk you take in the morning, that could be the difference between stiffness and flow, fog and clarity, depression and presence. Don't wait for pain to force you to sit. Walk now so that movement remains a choice, not a challenge. Lift a little, not heavy, not to prove something, just enough to remind your body, we're not done here. You don't have to deadlift. You don't have to train like an athlete. Lift your grocery bag with intention. Hold a pot just a moment longer. Use a resistance band while seated. Every act of strength tells your body we still build, not break down, not wither. Build. Connect nightly. Loneliness isn't just emotional, it's biological. Isolation changes your brain chemistry, your immune response, your inflammation. One conversation, one phone call, one genuine moment of laughter. It shifts your cortisol, lifts your serotonin, lengthens your life. You don't need dozens of friends. You need one real voice, a moment of warmth, a reason to remember that you're not fading. You're still part of this world. Eat mindfully, not restrictively, not obsessively, just with care. Give your body fuel it can use, color, texture, life. A bit more protein, a little less sugar at night. Hydration that isn't just coffee. Meals that don't just fill time but restore function. Your digestion doesn't work like it used to, but it still works. And when you feed it with kindness, it thanks you with energy. Sleep deeply, not perfectly, not with the pressure of 8 hours or else. Just better than yesterday. Let your body rest because it earned it, because your day had purpose, because your mind slowed down, because your evening had rhythm. Maybe that means no screens after a certain hour. Maybe it's a warm drink. Maybe it's a journal, or prayer, or music. Find your off switch. Make it sacred. The new paradigm isn't about perfection. It's not about tracking every biomarker or buying some fancy health gadget. It's about returning to rhythm, the natural beat of your day, the inhale and exhale of a life still in motion. Aging doesn't mean silence. It means finding a new tempo, a wiser one, a simpler one, a more intentional one. You don't need a transformation montage. You need tiny hinges that move big doors. You need habits that stack, actions that compound. 5 minutes of walking, not 50. A single grip squeeze, not a gym session. One real hug, one more laugh, one slow meal, one deep breath. That's the secret. When you stack rhythms, they reinforce each other. You walk, and your digestion improves. You digest, and your sleep deepens. You sleep, and your energy rises. You feel better, and suddenly you want to walk farther. It's not a to-do list. It's a loop. And when you find your loop, longevity isn't just a number. It becomes a feeling, a momentum, a quiet strength that builds. Forget the charts, forget the predictions, forget the fear. Start tuning your rhythm, because you're not a statistic. You're a system, and systems don't wait to be measured. They evolve. His name is Jorge, 72 years old, widowed, lived alone in a quiet apartment overlooking a street that rarely changed. The TV was always on in the background, mostly for noise. His phone didn't ring often. Meals were microwaved, days blurred together. He used to walk with his wife every morning. After she passed, that habit vanished. Not out of pain, but out of emptiness. "What's the point?" he would say to himself. Jorge wasn't sick. He wasn't bedridden. But he wasn't alive either. He moved less. He slept more during the day. He stopped answering invites. People assumed he was grieving. In reality, he was drifting. Not with sadness, just absence. Then, during a routine checkup, the doctor ran a series of standard tests. "Your walking speed has dropped," she said. "Your grip strength, too. You might want to start watching these things." Jorge nodded politely, but inside he heard something else. It's happening. That slow fade into stillness. The one the videos talk about. The one that turns years into waiting rooms. But something strange happened that night. Jorge couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because he felt something he hadn't felt in months. Restlessness, not the bad kind, the alive kind, the kind that whispered, "Maybe this isn't over." He woke up the next day and put on his old walking shoes. They were dusty, the laces were stiff, but he tied them, opened the door, walked to the end of the block, just once, just 5 minutes. That was it. He sat down afterward, winded, but oddly satisfied. The next day he walked 10. The next week, 15. His pace was slow, but his gaze was different. He started noticing things again. The neighbor's garden, the warmth of the morning sun, the way his legs felt used. He didn't talk about it. He just kept going. Then one day at the grocery store, he saw a small pair of hand grips hanging by the register. He remembered what the doctor had said. He bought them, started using them in the evening. 3 sets of 5 squeezes. Nothing heroic. But he kept at it. The tendons in his forearms felt sore at first. Then they felt awake. He noticed his hands didn't tremble when opening jars anymore. He stopped fumbling with keys. It felt like someone had turned the lights back on in his fingers. That same week, his daughter called, asked him if he wanted to come over for dinner. Normally, he would have said no. Too tired, too far. But this time, he said yes. Something in him wanted warmth again. Company, voices, the clinking of forks, the feeling of being part of something. That dinner became a weekly ritual. They laughed more, ate slower, talked deeper. And slowly, without even realizing it, Jorge began to reverse the numbers. At his next checkup, the nurse was surprised. "Your walking speed's improved," she said, "and your grip test is up 15%. Jorge just smiled. He didn't say much, but inside, he felt something no measurement could fully capture. Momentum. He still had his bad days. Stiffness, low moods, moments of forgetfulness. But now they weren't the only days. They were just part of a wider rhythm, a longer song. He kept walking, kept squeezing, kept showing up for dinner. His world, once the size of his living room, now stretched past the block, past his front door, past the isolation that had once convinced him he was nearing the end. The proof wasn't just in the numbers. It was in the light behind his eyes, in the way he stood taller at the table, in the way his laugh didn't fade after a single breath. Jorge didn't chase youth. He didn't deny his age. He just started responding. He treated every day like a new chance to engage with the machine that carried him, his body, his mind, his life. And in doing so, he didn't just add years to his life. He added life back to his years. But there's one overlooked daily habit, the small mental shift, that ties all of these together. It's not physical. It's not nutritional. It doesn't require equipment or willpower or time. And yet, it's the quiet force behind every long-living person you've ever admired. It's the reason Jorge didn't stop after one walk. It's the reason some people regain energy while others surrender it. It's what flips the brain from, "I'm too old for that," to, "Maybe I'll try." And here's the strange part. People over 70 almost never think to do it. Not because they can't, but because they've been told not to expect anything more. In the next video, we'll talk about this missing habit, the invisible mental lever that silently decides whether you age forward or backward. Because if you don't know how to activate it, everything else stays stuck.